In the heart of Victoria Island's glass and steel skyline, Vertex Consulting Group humming with the low drone of air conditioners and the clicking of high heels on marble floors. It's a Monday morning, but feels nothing like the sluggish start most people dread. Here, ambition crackles in the air. Josephine Caleb steps off the elevator on the 23rd floor, every bit the vision her colleagues have come to expect. Crisply tailored navy pencil skirt, white silk blouse, hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. She gives a brisk nod to the receptionist and strides into her office, where a half-empty coffee mug and a stack of morning briefs await. Outside her door, two junior analysts whisper, "Did you see her at last Friday's gala?" One asks, eyes widening. She danced circles around Cooper's date. The other replies, grinning. Josephine slips into her chair, her kingdom for the day, and powers on her laptop. A soft chime signals Anderson, Cooper's message popping up on her screen. "Lunch? I know a great spot." She sighs. Moments later, Anderson himself appears at her doorway, perfectly groomed, Armani suit tailored to every contour. He flashes that patented half-smile. "Josephine," he says, voice smooth as silk, "you simply must join me today. It's important." She looks up, calm but firm. "I appreciate the offer, Anderson, but I've already booked a meeting with the Lagos Metro team." His smile falters for a second. "Next time, then." "Perhaps." She offers a polite nod, and he retreats. No sooner does he disappear than Esther, her assistant, pokes her head in. "Anderson just asked again." Josephine closes her laptop. "Make it clear I'm unavailable." Esther arches an eyebrow. "Unavailable? You're single, boss." Josephine's lips twitch. "Yes, but I'll manage." By mid-morning, Anderson's persistence has become the talk of the floor. At the coffee station, Josephine overhears. Word is he's bought her roses 3 times this month, and she sends them back, a clerk whispers. When Anderson arrives again, this time at her desk with a bouquet of pale lilies, Josephine stands and places a hand on one of the blooms, unsettlingly gentle. "Anderson," she begins, voice low enough that only he can hear, "I'm married." He blinks, startled. "Married? You when?" "Last weekend," she lies, glancing up with perfectly innocent eyes. "In a small civil ceremony." "And to whom?" he asks, disbelief etched on his face. She taps her phone, brings up a photograph. A smiling man in a black suit, dark skin glowing in the Lagos morning sun. A municipal garbage collector clutching a battered lunchbox. "My husband," Josephine says. "Mr. Chike Obi. He worked for the city." Silence falls. Anderson's jaw tightens. He clears his throat. "I see." He steps back, carefully lays the lilies on her desk, and turns away. Josephine watches him go, then exhales slowly. Behind her, the floor buzzes with curiosity, but she offers only a serene smile. Crisis averted, for now. Only she knows the biggest secret of all. The garbage man who just became her perfect alibi, and, fate willing, something far more. Josephine paused at the wrought iron gate of her family's compound, phone in hand and mind still buzzing from the day's meetings. She'd wrapped up a late afternoon strategy session at Vertex, and all she wanted was to slip in her car and head home. Instead, something or someone caught her eye. A young man in a bright yellow vest was bent over a row of overflowing bins, sorting recyclables, sweeping away leaves that had drifted in from the bougainvillea. His dark skin gleamed in the slanting sun. His movements were careful, almost graceful. Josephine hesitated, curiosity pricking at her professional detachment. Who was this tidy-looking garbage man, and why did he seem so thoughtful? She stepped closer. "Excuse me," she called softly. He straightened, tucking a stray curl behind his ear. He wore plain khaki trousers and polished work boots. Nothing flashy, but his presence felt almost regal. "Yes, ma'am," he answered, voice warm. "I'm sorry to bother you," Josephine said, smoothing her blouse. "I've never seen you around here before. Are you new to the estate cleaning crew?" He paused, lifting a gentle smile. "I started last week. Name's Henry Walker." "I'm Josephine Caleb," she replied, offering her hand. He shook it, grip firm but gentle. Thank you for keeping everything tidy. It looks perfect. Henry glanced at the bins. Happy to help, ma'am. A clean home makes a happy heart. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You're very kind. I'll see you around, Mr. Walker. As she climbed in her car, Josephine's heart gave a little lurch. There was something in his calm eyes, a kindness she hadn't felt from anyone outside her circle of polished colleagues. But she shook it off. He was just another worker doing his job. 2 days later, the entire Vertex floor buzzed with excitement. Esther breezed past Josephine's office, fanning a memo in her hand. Bring your spouse to work day is announced for next Friday, she chirped. Everyone's talking about it. You'd better get her +1 lined up. Josephine froze. She'd lied to Anderson Cooper, again, when he'd cornered her at lunch. I'm married, she declared, whipping out a photo of a businessman. He'd backed off with a flustered nod, leaving the lilies he'd brought behind on her desk. But now, with spouses and partners and, well, public appearances looming, her alibi would fall apart. She pressed her palms to her desk. The panic rose like a tide. What if he asked for my husband's number? What if someone asks to meet him? She closed her eyes. There was only one person who could play the part. Henry Walker. The man she barely knew, but whose face she'd already shown Anderson's circle of gossiping colleagues. That evening, Josephine found herself driving back to the estate under a sky painted orange and pink. She parked outside the gate and, heart thumping, hopped over the low wall. The grounds were silent except for the distant chirp of crickets. She spotted the bins by the service entrance, but Henry was nowhere in sight. Mr. Walker, she called, voice echoing in the dusky air. Footsteps approached. Henry emerged from behind a hedge, wiping his brow with a clean handkerchief. Twilight framed him in soft light. Josephine Caleb, he guessed, pausing. What brings you here so late? She swallowed. I need a favor, she blurted. Under the yellow glow of a security lamp, Josephine explained. She told him about Vertex's Bring Your Spouse to Work Day, about Anderson's insistence, and about the precarious lie she'd spun. With each word, Henry listened calmly, arms crossed. When she finished, Henry tilted his head. You want me to pretend to be your husband? She ran a hand through her hair. For 1 week, just to get through the day. I'll pay you whatever you ask. Henry looked down at his worn boots, then up at her, eyes steady. You know, I work for the city sanitation department. I'm not exactly used to boardrooms and business suits. Josephine offered him a nervous laugh. Trust me, you'll do fine. Just stand next to me, smile, maybe shake a few hands. I'll coach you on everything. He studied her face, lit by the lamp. The air felt thick with possibility. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll do it. Relief flooded her. Thank you. Thank you so much, Henry. You don't know how much this means to me. He gave a small, genuine smile that made her chest flutter. I just want to help. What time should I pick you up on Friday? She asked, already imagining the weekend ahead. 8 o'clock, he said. I'll be at the gate. Josephine exhaled, heart lighter than it had been all day. Perfect. I'll send you all the details, she promised. As she slipped back through the gates, Henry resumed his work, collecting stray leaves as though nothing extraordinary had just happened. Josephine watched him for a moment, struck by how calm he remained. A real prince might have thrown a grand celebration for his own scheme. Henry simply tucked a stray leaf into his pocket and continued sweeping. In the car, Josephine pressed her hand to the steering wheel, exultant. She turned a sticky lie into a workable plan. And somehow, in the process, she'd found someone who offered kindness. And perhaps something even more unexpected, a chance at genuine connection. Next Friday, Vertex would meet Mr. Henry Walker, her husband. And for just 1 week, Josephine Caleb would be free of Anderson's advances. Free to see if the quiet garbage collector by her gate might, in truth, be far more than she ever imagined. Josephine woke early the next morning, excitement and nerves fluttering in her chest. She had spread out clothes on her bedroom chaise, a charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, silk tie in muted blue. Henry arrived in his work trousers and yellow vest, looking as out of place as a goldfish on dry land. Good morning, Mr. Walker. Josephine greeted him with a professional smile. Ready for your first lesson? Henry bowed his head lightly. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for doing this. In her living room, Josephine set up a small mirror on a side table. Stand here, she said, stepping behind him to adjust his collar. Keep your shoulders back and your chin up. Confidence comes from posture. Henry turned to look at himself. His vest disappeared beneath the tailored jacket. The loose shirt fit him perfectly. He looked, astonishingly, like someone meant to walk into boardrooms, not empty garbage bins. You look, Josephine paused, searching for the right word. Remarkable. For the first time, Henry allowed himself a small, shy smile. They moved on to conversation drills. Josephine sat in a chair with her notebook. When I introduce you, say, I'm so proud to be here with my wife, Josephine Caleb. Then offer a genuine compliment about her work. Henry repeated the lines carefully. I'm so proud to be here with my wife, Josephine Caleb. Your leadership inspires me every day. Excellent, Josephine said, clapping softly. Now practice greeting a coworker. Shake hands firmly, look them in the eye, and say something polite like, it's a pleasure to meet you. Henry practiced until his handshake no longer felt like a limp sponge. By lunchtime, Henry's lessons were complete. They shared sandwiches in her office, the windows overlooking Lagos traffic. Henry spread mustard on his bread with care, then looked up. I never imagined I could learn so much in one morning. Josephine laughed. You'll do great. Just be yourself beneath the suit. That kindness people see in the bins will shine through. Henry smiled, and Josephine felt a flutter at the idea of him wearing that suit next to her all day. At 3 o'clock on Bring Your Spouse Day, Josephine guided Henry through the revolving doors of Vertex. He stood tall, adjusting his tie one last time. Her assistant, Esther, did a double take. Josephine, your husband is wow, Esther whispered. Henry offered a gentle nod and extended his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, Esther. Esther shook it, eyes wide. Pleasure. In the boardroom, Anderson Cooper watched with narrowed eyes as Henry answered questions about Josephine's projects. When the director praised Josephine's efficiency and asked for a word from her husband, Henry cleared his throat and spoke in a warm, steady voice. I'm honored to be here, he said. Josephine's vision has transformed this company. I'm proud to support her in every way. Colleagues exchanged impressed looks. Murmurs of admiration rippled through the room. Anderson's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked between Josephine and Henry, suspicion burning behind his polite applause. After the speeches, the team moved to the reception. Glasses of sparkling water in hand, coworkers flocked around Josephine and Henry, asking about their love story. So, how did you two meet? A young analyst asked. Henry smiled. On the day of our civil wedding. Well, a small ceremony, he said, glancing at Josephine, who was biting her lip to hide a grin. She swept me off my feet. Josephine rolled her eyes playfully. I insisted on a modest celebration. Just the courthouse, a few close friends, and a carton of Puff Puff. Laughter followed, and Henry winked at her. Josephine felt a warm glow. Later that evening, Josephine walked Henry back to her apartment. Time for the next lesson, she teased. Cooking. In her kitchen, Henry donned an apron. He chopped onions and peppers with methodical precision. Josephine watched, leaning against the counter. Steam rose from the pot as he stirred tomato sauce. You know, he said, when I was a boy, my grandmother taught me to cook. She said food brings people together. Josephine's heart softened. I think you'll bring a whole company together with your charm tomorrow. They sat down to eat on the small balcony. The sky had turned to rich indigo, stars stirring above Lagos lights. Henry served her first. Please try this. She tasted the sauce, robust, comforting, spiced just right. This is amazing, she said. You're a natural. Henry chuckled. Just simple recipes from home. They clinked glasses, and Josephine felt at ease in a way she hadn't with any of her polished colleagues. After dinner, they settled on the couch with mugs of ginger tea. Conversation flowed easily. Henry spoke of childhood afternoons chasing goats in his village. Josephine shared memories of her first big consulting win. You're so talented, Henry said softly, looking at her in the dim light. I could never imagine such drive. She shook her head. I've always admired people who work with their hands, who create something real. You inspire me more than you know." Henry's gaze held hers, and Josephine felt her cheeks warm. As the night deepened, Josephine noticed how gentle Henry's smile was, how comfortable she felt beside him. Yet, in her mind, he remained the humble garbage man she'd chosen for a favor. She caught herself and mentally shook her head. He was so much more, but she wasn't ready to admit it. When Henry stood to leave, she walked him to the door. "Thank you for today," she said, voice soft. "You were perfect." Henry bowed his head. "I'm happy I could help, and happy I spent the day with you." At the gate, he paused. "Good night, Mrs. Caleb." "Good night, Mr. Walker," she replied, watching as he melted into the night shadows, his figure lit by the faint glow of streetlights. Alone in her apartment, Josephine sat back on the couch, heart beating fast. The pretend game had begun, and already it felt dangerously real. She closed her eyes, smiling against the memory of his kindness. For the first time in years, she wondered what might happen if the line between act and truth began to blur. Exposed and humiliated crisis. Monday morning at Vertex began like any other, until the company intranet lit up with a single, damning message. Anderson Cooper, brimming with vindictive satisfaction, had hired a discreet private investigator. In Anderson's sleek office the day before, he'd slid an envelope across the mahogany desk. "What did you find?" he demanded, eyes cold. The investigator, mid-40s and tight-lipped, produced photographs. Henry Walker, not a corporate heir, but a uniformed garbage collector in Josephine's estate. "He's not her husband," the PI reported. "Just a local worker you paid." Anderson's grin was a knife. "Publish it at once," he said. Within minutes, the news spread. The intranet post bore a headline in bold red: "Josephine Caleb's husband exposed as garbage man. Not even a real spouse." Colleagues who had admired her brilliance now whispered in the hallway. At the coffee station, 3 analysts snickered. "Did you see this?" one hissed. "She actually hired a sanitation worker." "She must be desperate," another laughed. Imagine relying on that joke of a husband. Josephine, stepping off the elevator, heard the snickers before she saw the post. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She froze at the entrance to her office, hand on the doorframe, mind racing. How had Anderson discovered the truth? Why had she ever thought her lie would stay hidden? By mid-morning, a cluster of managers hovered outside her door. Esther, her assistant, met her eyes with sorrow. "Boss," she began, but Josephine shook her head. Inside, HR's director sat behind her desk, arms folded. "Ms. Caleb," he said quietly, voice sympathetic yet firm, "we've received complaints about misrepresentation." Josephine's throat went dry. Please," he interrupted gently. "We'll need your side of the story." She tried to plead, to explain the pressure she'd felt. Anderson's relentless advances, her fear of scandal, but the words tangled in her throat. Instead, she mumbled that she had no defense. Her cheeks burned, tears pricking her eyes. Without another word, she turned and left, the click of her heels echoing down the corridor as laughter and pity trailed in her wake. That afternoon, Josephine sat alone at her desk, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights. Every glance from a coworker felt like a spotlight. Messages pinged in her inbox, some sympathetic, others cruel. Her phone buzzed with texts from friends expressing shock. Even the office janitor gave her a pitying nod. The woman who'd commanded respect now felt exposed down to her bones. Unable to stay, Josephine packed her purse. She hesitated only a moment before placing her resignation letter on her boss's desk. The letter was brief, a few lines expressing regret and thanking the company for the opportunity. She signed it in neat script, her hand surprisingly steady. Slipping out of the building, she refused to look back. As she stepped into the glare of the afternoon sun, Anderson watched from the glass facade, triumphant. He had won. His laughter was silent but vivid, the final flourish on her downfall. Weeks passed in a blur of lonely mornings and sleepless nights. Josephine retreated to her family estate on the outskirts of Lagos, seeking solace among familiar walls. Yet every room felt too large, too empty without the bustle of Vertex. She wandered the gardens at dawn, her reflection in the fountain's water haunted by shame and regret. At dusk, she lit candles in the courtyard chapel, praying for a way forward, and for Henry, whose kindness she still treasured in her heart. Then, on a bright Thursday morning, the stillness shattered. A deep rumble rolled across the driveway, a convoy of black SUVs, their engines humming like restless beasts. Neighbors peered over gates. Staff spilled out of the guest cottages. Word spread in panicked whispers. Royal convoy. Josephine stood on the front steps, bewildered. The estate gate swung open to admit a line of polished vehicles, their windows tinted. Guards in resplendent uniforms, scarlet jackets trimmed in gold, dismounted and formed a solemn escort. At the head of the convoy rode a massive white coach, its windows curtained in violet silk. Servants and gardeners clustered behind Josephine, eyes wide. "Madam, what is happening?" one whispered. "Is it the president?" Before she could answer, the coach door swung open. The royal twist climax. From the coach emerged a figure clothed in the most extraordinary garments she had ever seen. A long, flowing robe of deep emerald embroidered with intricate gold patterns fell to his polished shoes. On his head rested a circlet of silver and gemstones that caught the morning sun like captured stars. The man who stepped out was Henry Walker, but elevated, transformed. The gentle garbage collector was gone. In his place, a prince. Josephine's breath caught. Time slowed as he approached, each step measured and dignified. Around them, the estate staff fell to one knee, heads bowed in respect. Yet Josephine remained rooted to the spot, stunned into silence. Could this really be him? Henry halted a few feet away and removed his crown, holding it over his heart as he spoke. His voice, once soft and humble, now resonated with quiet authority. "Josephine Caleb," he said, "for weeks I have watched you suffer the consequences of another's cruelty. I have seen your talent, your strength, and the kindness you give even when you are in pain. I am Prince Henry of Aloria, a hidden kingdom that thrives on oil and tradition. I walked among your people as a garbage collector to find someone who would love me for who I am, not for a crown or fortune." Tears sprang to her eyes. She shook her head, as though to clear a dream. "Prince Henry," she whispered, "you all this time?" He lifted a hand, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Yes, I chose a humble life to find true love, and I found it in you. I offered to be your fake husband because I wanted to be close to you, even if only in honesty's shadow. But now I offer you my true self, my kingdom, and my heart. Josephine Caleb, will you marry me for real?" Silence reigned, broken only by the rustle of guards' capes and the soft clink of Henry's crown. Josephine felt tears streaming down her cheeks, tears of relief, joy, and surprise. Her lips trembled as she searched his earnest gaze. "Yes," she said, voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Henry, my prince, I will marry you." At her words, Henry smiled, and the guards rose. Trumpets sounded from the coach, and the estate burst into life. Workers cheered, neighbors applauded, and servants lined the driveway with flowers. Anderson's victory was swallowed by this grand spectacle of true love and hidden royalty. Henry slipped the crown back on his head and drew Josephine into his arms. She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, real and kind, beneath all the splendor. Around them, the world seemed to glow with promise, as if Lagos itself celebrated their union. And so, from humiliation's depths, Josephine's story soared to its greatest triumph, the garbage man who became her prince and her king. Revenge and Redemption finale. The morning after their spectacular wedding, social media across Africa exploded with images of Prince Henry and Josephine Caleb beaming beneath the palace arches. Hashtags like #GarbageManToKing, #IloriRoyalWedding, and #Josephina's Reign trended on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. News anchors replayed the moment Henry lifted Josephine's hand to kiss her palm, calling it the most romantic act seen in Lagos this decade. Even international outlets ran breathless segments on the hidden prince and the brilliant consultant who stole his heart, celebrating a story of humility, courage, and true love. Meanwhile, in the halls of Vertex Consulting, employees sat glued to their screens. Some watched the wedding live stream on their phones under desks. Others crowded around the breakroom television. Whispers circulated. "She's married to royalty now." I can't believe he was a garbage man. But beneath the awe was a new respect for Josephine. The woman they once ridiculed had become the face of a kingdom, her journey from shame to sovereignty enthralling the entire company. A week later, under the cover of pre-dawn fog, Prince Henry summoned his financial ministers to the royal conference room. The long mahogany table gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers as Henry outlined his plan. Vertex Consulting Group, he began, voice firm, is an institution that once employed my wife and wronged her. We will acquire a controlling interest. Prepare the funds. His advisor bowed, signaling the kingdom's financial wizards to transfer millions discreetly. By breakfast, Aloria's sovereign wealth fund had purchased 51% of Vertex shares on the Lagos Stock Exchange, sending the stock price soaring. At the same time, board members in Vertex's Rise headquarters received an urgent notice. A royal emissary would arrive at noon. Rumors flew that the company was being taken over by foreign investors. But when the fleet of black SUVs pulled up and palace guards in crisp uniforms delivered the summons, even seasoned executives felt a thrill. Inside the boardroom, Henry entered wearing a tailored suit that subtly echoed his royal garments. Emerald tie, silver cufflinks engraved with Aloria's crest. Josephine sat at his side, regal in a cream-colored blazer. Henry stood at the head of the table, voice resonant. "Good afternoon. I am Prince Henry of Aloria, and from this moment, Vertex Consulting is under my stewardship. My first act is to remove anyone whose conduct undermines our values." All eyes turned to Anderson Cooper, who sat rigidly in his chair. Henry's gaze fixed on him. "Mr. Cooper, your persistent harassment of Ms. Caleb violated every principle we uphold. Consider this your notice of termination, effective immediately." Josephine rose, heart pounding but voice steady. "Anderson," she said, "you used your power to humiliate me. For that, I hope you learn true integrity." Anderson paled, stammering an apology that fell flat. As palace guards escorted him from the room, murmurs of approval rippled among the board members. The once arrogant executive left in disgrace, his career in ruins. Within hours, Henry issued a royal memo, distributed to every branch and partner of Vertex worldwide, detailing Anderson's misconduct and outlining a new code of ethics. Zero tolerance for harassment, mandatory respect training, and a commitment to integrity. The memo closed with a personal note from Josephine. "In my darkest hour, I learned that true leadership demands compassion and courage. Let this be the start of a new era." The next morning, Vertex's nameplate was replaced with the official seal of Aloria, Vertex Global. On the 23rd floor, Josephine unlocked the door to her new office as Global Director of Women Empowerment and Integrity. Sunlight filtered through tinted glass onto a mahogany desk engraved with her name and title. Palace aides had decorated the walls with art celebrating resilience, photographs of women overcoming adversity, quotes from influential female leaders, and a framed clipping of the internet post where Anderson had been exposed. Her first visitor was Esther, her long-time assistant, who now served as her chief of staff. "Welcome, Director Caleb," Esther announced with pride. "The team is eager to meet you." Josephine smiled, memories of embarrassment fading under the weight of her new purpose. "Thank you, Esther. Let's get started." They reviewed the day's agenda, a global video address and a women's leadership summit to be held in Abuja next month. At 10 o'clock, Josephine stood before a live webcast, flanked by Henry on one side and Vertex's new executive board on the other. Thousands tuned in from Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and beyond. Cleared throats and camera adjustments fell silent as she began. Good morning. Today marks not only my personal redemption, but the birth of a corporate culture rooted in dignity and equality. We will launch Project Elevate, a mentorship and scholarship program for young women across Africa. Together, we will break barriers. Applause erupted from the room, screens filled with virtual claps and heart emojis. Henry squeezed her hand, pride shining in his eyes. Their shared triumph resonated across continents, inspiring messages flooding the chat. Later, at the Abuja Summit's gala dinner, Josephine addressed delegates, CEOs, government ministers, NGO leaders, under the grand dome of the Transcorp Hilton. Her speech wove personal anecdotes of humiliation and hope with actionable plans. Leadership workshops in rural communities. Integrity councils within corporations to safeguard whistleblowers. Scholarships for women in STEM and business. As she spoke, Henry watched from the front row, surrounded by Aloria's ambassadors. When she concluded, he rose and led a standing ovation, his princely robes rustling like triumph. Rose petals drifted from the balcony, and the hashtag #ElevateAfrica began trending within minutes. Behind the scenes, Henry and Josephine convened with Vertex's board to refine budget allocations. Henry leaned over the table and whispered, "Your program will change lives. I'm proud of you." Josephine's eyes glistened. In that moment, her shame was fully replaced by purpose. In the weeks that followed, Vertex offices across Africa buzzed with volunteer signups for mentorship, integrity workshops, and scholarship committees. The corporate intranet featured a Her Story series highlighting women who had risen through adversity. Anderson's name was never mentioned again. His downfall served as a cautionary tale without celebration. At home in the Aloria Palace, now Josephine's sanctuary, she and Henry walked hand in hand through the rose garden. Petals from the midsummer bloom carpeted the path. Henry paused under an arch, turning to Josephine. "You transformed a shameful moment into a beacon of hope," he said softly. "I knew from the start you were destined for greatness." Josephine rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of jasmine and renewal. Their journey from deception and disgrace to sovereignty and service became a beloved legend. Across Africa, women spoke of the consultant who faked a marriage only to find a prince and then used her new power to uplift thousands. Newspapers ran follow-up stories, profiles on scholarship recipients, features on integrity workshops that exposed corporate fraud, and interviews with Josephine about her vision for the future. On the first anniversary of their wedding, Henry and Josephine returned to Vertex's Lagos headquarters for a celebration. Employees lined the lobby, chanting congratulations, Director Caleb. A massive banner read, 1 year of integrity, 1 year of empowerment. Josephine cut the cake, a rich chocolate confection decorated with gold leaf, and distributed slices to staff, many of whom wore Project Elevate t-shirts. As the party wound down, Josephine stepped onto a small stage before the crowd. "This is more than a milestone," she said, voice clear. "It's proof that even from the lowest point, we can rise together." The assembled team erupted in cheers, and Henry, standing at her side, kissed her cheek. Thus ended their chapter of revenge and began a new era of redemption, not just for Josephine and Henry, but for every woman and man inspired by their story. The garbage man who became a king and the brilliant consultant who became a queen had reclaimed their dignity and used it to light the way for others. Their love, forged in humble beginnings and tempered by trial, became the catalyst for transformation across an entire continent.